is an interesting one too. This is something Vish alerted me to. I haven't been following the rest of the division so much in the offseason, but Vish has told me that there's a new matchup problem in the NFC West. Who is it, Vish?
Yeah, so I was reading this story in The Athletic, and I was reading about this guy a little bit before. Okay, there's this tight end for the Rams. His name is Jacob Harris. They drafted him out of the 4th round in UCF. Our man, family Rams fan right here. Rams Reloaded and Stafford is ready to roll. Paid you $5 to shout him out, and he's right about it. Yesterday, a guy named Vikilla donated to Blake and I saying, is Jacob Harris the new matchup problem in the NFC West? And Blake and I were slightly unprepared for the topic because we didn't watch him coming out of UCF, but I had read about him and read that he'd been killing it in Rams camp. So like we kind of answered it. Now I didn't get the chance to watch him in the last 24 hours at UCF, but I did get to read more about him. And so the first things first, this guy is starting with Tyler Higbee hurt already for them in OTAs and minicamp and as a rookie. And I thought the funny thing was my man Rams Reloaded said that he's the next Kittle. And one of the things you and I talked about on the phone before this is one of the things that truly impressed you with George Kittle, and you knew that he would be a contributor from day one, was that they were throwing to him a lot in his first OTAs, and he was the starting tight end.
Now, they were phasing out Vance McDonald. Remember, they had just given, Balky had just given McDonald a 5-year extension. And that was supposed to be one of their key cogs. They got rid of Vance McDonald before the season started. They didn't like anything about his game. I'm not sure what it was, but he was getting phased out, and Kittle was getting phased in. It was very interesting.
Yeah, right. And in this case,
this was when McDonald was still on the team. Yes.
Right, right. Yes. You've also talked about the story about how Kyle yelled at – the only time you've ever seen him yell at a player is Vance McDonald.
First day of OTAs, right? And they're just warming up. The way it works is before they do 7-on-7 and 11-on-11s, they just do they stretch and then they catch passes where they just run different routes. And Kyle Shanahan stopped the first OTA practice in front of the media to scream at Vance McDonald. It was like, wow, this feels premeditated.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think that was premeditated. I think he would have watched the film and said that I'm going to trade this guy this offseason. So I think he just wanted to set a tone for how practice is going to work with the media and the players.
So when I trade him, the media will actually have that in the back of their mind, like, oh, yeah, I remember that.
This is the man. He's the man.
And it was about some route he ran. He didn't like the way he ran a route. I kept thinking, like, man, you're lucky you didn't coach Vernon Davis, because that was something you kind of just live with Vernon Davis's banana route. So he didn't have any type of cuts, but he was good. Right, but yeah.
Do you remember TV shows had made references to this, but like how I forgot who I saw it once on Friends when they mentioned that a director used to fire one person on set to set the tone for how the movie was going to go and who the man was. To me, that was Kyle Shanahan yelling at him and then trading him. So everybody,
or maybe you've had a professor who will like kick a student out the first day of class, or maybe not that, but the way our professors would always do is they would come on strong and make it seem a lot harder the first day than it was going to be. So it's like, if you want to drop out, you want to drop the class, do it. It's going to be really hard. And the next day it's like, all right, guys, now that you're still here, you're the guys I like. So yeah, I feel that little bad cop to start it out makes sense. Rod Simmons says you guys are what? Go ahead. Let's see what Rod Simmons has to say. Let me just say what Rod, and then we'll move on. You guys are generational. Grant, if I get the nerve to be a YouTuber, I know who to get to endorse me. Vish, keep it up, bro. Excellent material. Thank you, Rod. Appreciate it, Rod.
Thank you, Rod.
What were you going to say, Vish?
So I just wanted to get back to Jacob Harris real quick, right? We went on a little tangent. So here's the interesting thing about Jacob Harris, right? He was a receiver coming out of college. They're turning him into a tight end. Obviously, it seems that he's consuming the Rams playbook and everything if they're starting him in OTAs. There's a little bit of George Kittle that he was starting in OTAs too. Not saying he's the next Kittle. I'm just saying it's impressive for a rookie tight end to be starting in OTAs, especially given that tight end is a developmental position a little bit. Usually good tight ends take 1 or 2 years. They're not George Kittle, who start 15 games as a rookie. They're not prodigies like that. Well, here's the really interesting thing about this guy, Grant. So he's 6'5", 225, and he runs a 4.39 40. So he's a freaky athlete, but I don't think people understand how freaky of an athlete he is. He came out of the draft as a receiver. They're turning him into a tight end. His relative athletic score, a lot of people who play fantasy football put stock into this. It's an analytical measure of how athletic a football player is. So it measures like your 20-yard split, your 40-yard dash, and it gives you basically a score out of 10 based on how like the percentile of the times you run, how they are compared to the rest of your draft class. His relative athletic score as a wide receiver was number 31 out of 2,517 wide receivers drafted since 1987. So this guy's a freaky athlete for a receiver. But here's where it gets crazier with Jacob Harris. He had a relative athletic score of 9.88 out of possible 10. Kyle Pitts, the best player in this draft, had a relative athletic score of 9.66 out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's a problem.
Again, I'm not saying that this guy is going to be anything because we're in OTAs. Let's not overreact. But the Rams have one freaky athlete who at tight end who seems to be doing well.
Prepared. So some the Niners have to take stock in and have a plan for in case it happens. Call. Man, what an athlete.